Nina Carter had been looking forward to her long-awaited break for weeks. Balancing her role as a software developer at a high-stress startup and raising her twins left her little room to breathe. But today, for the first time in months, she had carved out a moment just for herself. A leisurely trip to the city's newest cultural district, a place filled with art, boutique shops, and charming cafes. The late autumn afternoon was crisp, with the sun casting a soft amber hue over cobblestone streets. As Nina stepped into the Artisan Collective, a sprawling gallery and marketplace, her heart lifted. The space was alive with creativity. Walls adorned with vibrant paintings, shelves filled with handcrafted pottery, and local musicians playing soft melodies in the corner. She wandered through the displays, her eyes catching on a stunning piece of jewelry in a glass case. A silver necklace set with a deep blue lapis lazuli pendant. It reminded her of the ocean, a place she hadn't visited in years but often dreamed about. Nina felt an inexplicable pull toward it. This would be perfect for the charity gala next week, she thought. She imagined herself wearing it, a symbol of serenity and strength, in front of her colleagues and community leaders. With growing excitement, she approached the counter. Behind it stood a tall, sharp-featured woman with impeccably styled hair and a clipboard in hand. Her name tag read Genevieve. The air of authority around her was almost intimidating. "Hi, I'd like to see that necklace, please," Nina said with a warm smile, pointing to the piece in the display. Genevieve raised an eyebrow and gave Nina a quick once-over. "Oh, that one," she said, her tone dripping with skepticism. "It's a limited edition. Quite an investment." Nina's smile faltered. "Yes, I understand. I'd still like to try it on." After a long pause, Genevieve sighed and unlocked the case. "Be careful with it," she said curtly, handing the necklace over with exaggerated caution. Nina ignored the prick of irritation and placed the necklace around her neck, turning to the mirror nearby. The piece gleamed against her skin, and for a moment, she felt radiant. But her reverie was shattered by a sharp laugh behind her. "Well, it's an interesting choice," Genevieve remarked, her voice laced with condescension. "I'm not sure it suits everyone." The comment stung. Nina turned slowly to face the woman. "Excuse me," she said, her voice steady despite the rising indignation. "I just mean," Genevieve continued, her smirk widening, "sometimes simpler styles work better for certain, let's say, lifestyles." Before Nina could respond, a younger sales associate approached, a look of unease on his face. "Is everything all right here?" he asked, glancing nervously between Nina and Genevieve. "No, it isn't," Nina said firmly. "I'm being insulted for wanting to purchase something in your store." The younger associate looked flustered but said nothing, while Genevieve crossed her arms and responded coldly. "I'm only trying to be honest with our clientele." "Honest?" Nina repeated, her anger finally boiling over. "Or judgmental?" A small crowd had begun to gather, their murmurs filling the air as they picked up on the tension. Nina felt her cheeks flush but refused to back down. "I came here to support local artists and treat myself, not to be belittled by someone who clearly has no idea who I am." Genevieve's eyes narrowed, but before she could reply, a familiar voice called out, "Nina." Nina turned to see Alex, her neighbor and a sculptor whose work she admired, weaving through the crowd. His warm smile faltered when he saw the look on her face. "What's going on?" "She's being harassed for daring to want something nice," said a woman in the crowd, a stranger, but one who clearly sympathized. Alex's brow furrowed, and he stepped forward. "Genevieve, is this how you're representing the artists here?" he asked, his voice firm but measured. "This isn't just bad for business. It's embarrassing for all of us." Genevieve's composure wavered for the first time. This was a misunderstanding," she stammered. "I didn't mean—" "You didn't mean to what?" Nina interjected, her voice rising with conviction. "Insult me? Judge me? Assume I don't belong here?" Alex turned to Nina. "You don't deserve this. Let's get the manager." Before long, the gallery manager arrived, a soft-spoken man named Peter who immediately assessed the situation. After hearing Nina's account and witnessing the murmuring crowd, his expression grew grave. "Genevieve, can I speak to you privately?" he said, his voice tight. As the manager led Genevieve away, Alex turned to Nina. I'm sorry you had to go through that. This place is supposed to celebrate art and community, not tear people down. Nina smiled weakly, grateful for his support. Thank you. I don't understand why people think they can treat others like that. You stood your ground, Alex said, his tone encouraging. That's more than most people would do. The crowd began to disperse, leaving Nina and Alex by the jewelry display. The younger associate returned, holding the necklace with careful hands. I'm so sorry for what happened, he said earnestly. If you still want it, I'd be happy to help. Nina hesitated, then nodded. Yes, I still want it. As she left the artisan collective, the necklace securely wrapped in its box, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about buying something beautiful. It was about reclaiming her voice and knowing her worth. And as she walked into the crisp autumn air, Nina realized this was only the beginning of her story. A collective gasp rippled through the room. A joke, Nina repeated, her voice trembling with disbelief. Humiliating someone isn't a joke, it's cruelty. Peter, the artisan collective's manager, glanced nervously between Nina and the now dismissed Genevieve. Meanwhile, the gathered crowd murmured in agreement. Some shared hushed anecdotes of facing similar disdain, while others nodded silently in support. The air grew heavier, a charged silence filled with unspoken unity. Finally, Peter turned to Genevieve, who stood pale and rigid, her clipboard now forgotten. I've made my decision, he said, his voice firm. Your behavior is unacceptable and completely against what this space represents. Your time here is over. Genevieve's face drained of color. You can't be serious, she sputtered, but Peter didn't flinch. As murmurs of approval swelled among the crowd, Nina felt a wave of relief. Justice, though bittersweet, had been served. But just as she thought the matter was over, a voice cut through the applause like a knife. You think this is the end? The crowd turned to see a man standing at the edge of the room. He had a dark, imposing presence, with unkempt hair and piercing eyes that scanned the room with hostility. It was Dominic, Genevieve's brother, a known agitator in the district who prided himself on protecting his own. You've got a lot of nerve, Dominic sneered, his gaze landing on Nina. You don't know who you're messing with. The room fell silent. Nina's pulse quickened, but she refused to look away. What's that supposed to mean? She asked, her voice steady despite the chill creeping up her spine. Dominic took a step closer, his voice low and threatening. It means you've made a powerful enemy. Don't think this ends here. Nina, let's go, Alex said, stepping beside her protectively. But Nina raised a hand, stopping him. We won't be intimidated, she said firmly, her gaze fixed on Dominic. He smirked. We'll see about that, he muttered, retreating toward the door. As he left, the tension in the room remained thick, his parting words a shadow over the momentary victory. In the days that followed, Dominic's veiled threats loomed in Nina's mind. She tried to focus on the positives, continuing her advocacy for inclusion within the artisan collective and attending workshops to promote fair treatment for all. Still, unease lingered. Late-night calls from unknown numbers, an unfamiliar car parked outside her apartment. It all added to her growing paranoia. Marcus, her husband, remained her rock, assuring her that they would face whatever came together. One evening, as Nina prepared for a meeting to discuss creating safer spaces in the community, she received a text from Alex. Dominic's been stirring up trouble. Saw him outside the collective earlier. Be careful. Her stomach tightened. Marcus, she said, turning to him, this is getting worse. I think Dominic's planning something. We're not backing down, Marcus replied firmly. Whatever he's trying to do, we'll deal with it. Nina wanted to believe him, but an uneasy feeling gnawed at her as the meeting approached. The meeting that night drew a larger crowd than anticipated. The energy in the room was electric, a mixture of solidarity and determination. Nina stood at the front, her hands gripping the edges of the podium. She scanned the faces of friends and allies, drawing strength from their presence. Just as she began to speak, a loud crash echoed from the entrance. The door flew open, and Dominic stormed in, flanked by two men who carried themselves with dangerous confidence. The chatter in the room died instantly. You think you can gather people to talk about me? Dominic barked, his voice echoing off the walls. You're playing a dangerous game. Marcus rose from his seat, his expression hard as stone. You're not welcome here, Dominic. Leave, leave. Dominic laughed, the sound cold and menacing. This isn't over until I say it is. The tension in the room was palpable. Chairs scraped as people shifted nervously. Aisha, who had been helping with the event, whispered urgently to Nina, "We need to get out of here now." "No," Nina said quietly, her resolve hardening. "This is exactly what he wants, for us to run scared." Dominic stepped closer, his gaze narrowing. "I'll make this simple. Shut this down, or I'll make sure you regret it." "Enough!" Marcus shouted, stepping between Nina and Dominic. "You don't scare us." The confrontation escalated as Dominic's men moved toward the front of the room. The crowd erupted into chaos, shouts, the scrape of chairs, people rushing toward the exits. Marcus tried to shield Nina, but in the commotion, Dominic lunged at him, shoving him backward. Marcus hit the ground hard, and Nina's scream cut through the din. "Marcus!" she cried, rushing to his side. But before she could reach him, Dominic grabbed her arm, yanking her roughly. "Let her go!" A voice boomed from the entrance, and police officers stormed in, their presence immediately halting the chaos. "Step back," one officer commanded, pointing at Dominic and his men. Dominic reluctantly released Nina, his jaw tight with rage. "This isn't over," he hissed as officers restrained him. After Dominic was taken into custody, the meeting ended in a somber silence. Marcus, nursing a bruised shoulder, sat beside Nina, their hands tightly clasped. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice low. "I'm fine," she replied, though her trembling hands betrayed her. But it's just the beginning. In the following weeks, the collective rallied together, determined to turn the attack into a call for change. They organized public discussions, workshops, and even a petition demanding greater safety measures for community spaces. Yet Nina couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The fight wasn't over. Dominic's shadow lingered, a reminder of the cost of standing up for what was right.